We will now move on to topical questions. And my apologies, if you would just excuse me a second. Before we move to topical questions, we'll look at the revised business motion. So it's consideration of business motion 18622 in the name of Jamie Hepburn on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on changes to the business programme. And any member who wishes to speak to the motion should press their request to speak button now. And I call on Jamie Hepburn to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak to the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 18622 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed. And we shall now move to topical questions. And at question number 1, I call Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking in response to the overall increase in recorded crimes in the past year, including rape, violent crime, antisocial behaviour and shoplifting.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, Scotland continues to be a safe place to live, with recorded crime fallen by more than half since 1991. However, I am very concerned at those areas that have seen increases, particularly in sexual violence and domestic abuse. And whilst I welcome that some of this increase will be due to an increase in reporting and trust in the justice system, it is abhorrent that such crimes, which are mainly against women, are taking place. That is why, through the Equally Safe strategy, we are aiming to tackle and prevent such violence. And this year, we are investing £4.2 billion across the justice system, including a record £1.64 billion for policing.
Liam Kerr.
Well, the data actually shows that in the year to June 2025, violent crime is up, sexual crime is up, antisocial behaviour is up, shoplifting is up. The President of ASPS said, how bad does it have to get before we actually see some meaningful and credible steps to ensure policing is able to deal with these things? What's needed is actually a real, credible response. So has the Cabinet Secretary got a meaningful and credible response she can provide, or will she continue to hide behind decades-old statistics?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I thank Mr Kerr for his question, and of course it remains imperative that we acknowledge that Scotland remains a safer place, certainly under this government. But where we are seeing changes in the types of offences, it is imperative that we respond to that. So if we take, for example, crimes of dishonesty, housebreaking has fallen, but shoplifting has increased significantly. And that's why, for example, we are investing £3 million into retail crime, which is seeing positive outcomes from that investment. But over and above our record investment for policing, there is investment that is going into the violence prevention framework and the work of delivering Equally Safe to tackle the abhorrent crimes against women, which is in essence about prevention, providing support to victims, and also changing the behaviour of men in terms of those underlying behaviours and attitudes.
Liam Kerr.
Well, it is important that the government responds, and antisocial behaviour is up by 5%. Offensive weapons use is up 13%. Now, in late July, I asked the Victims Minister what actions have been implemented following the Youth Violence Summit that the government insisted was not yet another talking shop. The Minister could not name a single action, not one. Can the Cabinet Secretary help the Victims Minister and tell us if any new actions from that summit have now been implemented, and if so, when will they result in these figures finally starting to fall?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, of course, any level of violence amongst young people, or indeed any citizen, is concerning. It is imperative that as a government we continue to invest on early intervention, and prevention is of course key. And following the summit, I advised media and indeed the Parliament that the cash back to communities funding for the next phase was or is increasing from £20 million to £26 million. And one of the actions, additional actions being taken forward following the summit is the delivery of violence and weapon prevention education roadshows in targeted areas where levels of violence are high. And it is also crucial as an action that we listen to the voices of young people, and that is young people who are law-abiding, who are seeking to get on with their life and attend school. But we also have to reach out to those in our communities that have become marginalised. So the voices of young people are particularly important in all of this, as is the work across government, not least the investment in education, which of course has seen excellent exam results just published over the summer.
I'm obviously keen to take supplementaries. If we can all be concise, that would be helpful. And I call Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The vast number of charges under the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act are being prosecuted, with over 90% proceeding to court. Does the Cabinet Secretary believe that changes like this in our laws and our culture will empower women to speak out and have the confidence to go to the police, court and support services?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, an important part of the Equally Safe strategy is to continue our work to empower victims to come forward to report crimes. It is essential where a crime has occurred that people have the confidence and the support to come forward. What we are seeing with the Domestic Abuse 2019 Act, which is often described as gold standard legislation, it's described as world-leading legislation, is that crimes under that piece of legislation has increased by 26%. But of course, we can't just stop with our legislation on domestic abuse. It is important that we bring forward other measures, and that is what we're doing in the remainder of this term. And in only a few weeks' time, we will be debating the Victims' Witness and Justice Reform Bill, which is about implementing a trauma-informed justice system and supporting victims of sexual violence with, I hope, the implementation of the new Sexual Offences Court.
Ash Regan.
Presiding Officer, given the crimes linked to prostitution are rising, a crime that's obviously rooted in exploitation and violence, does the Cabinet Secretary accept that Scotland's current laws are failing to protect those that are exploited by the global sex trade? And will the Government work with me in supporting my unbuyable bill to make the purchase of sex illegal in all circumstances, so we send a very clear message that sex is not for sale in Scotland and the burden of criminality lies with the exploiters and not the exploited?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I very much agree that criminal exploitation of women, that sexual exploitation of women, is a form of violence against women and girls, and I very much also agree that the core root of the problem is indeed the behaviour of men who think women are there to purchase as they please. Where I think Parliament will have to come to a view is what course of action will best protect women now and in the future, and what course of action will now keep women safe. And the Government, like every other parliamentary group, will look to see how Ms Regan's bill progresses in the course of parliamentary scrutiny.
Sharon Dowie.
Presiding Officer, shoplifting is up 124% in the past 4 years, and that's an underestimate, as many retailers don't bother reporting it as they don't think the shoplifter would face justice. They're right, because less than half of the shoplifting cases are actually solved in Scotland, and most of those caught rack up fines they have no intention of paying, or they get a slap in the wrist. It's clear the current system is not working, so when will the Government change course, bring in stronger punishments for repeat offenders and increase police visibility in our streets to deter thieves?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, of course our independent courts very much do take into account people who make repeat offending, and a key aspect of the Retail Crime Task Force, which the Scottish Government have supported with additional funding of £3 million, is to stop people from becoming perpetrators of acquisitive crime, bringing perpetrators to justice, with very much a focus on repeat offenders and indeed organised criminals, as well as strengthening the collective protection against retail crime. And of course the Task Force bulletin for July 2005 has reported on significant results in Edinburgh since April, with 234 charges been brought against retail crime offenders. Where the cases dealt with relate to an estimated £25,000 of stolen group, and the team's work has also led to 230 offender identifications across the city, and I'd be happy to provide more information.
Thank you. We move to question 2. Again, concise responses and questions would be very gratefully received. Jackie Baillie.
To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to reduce NHS waiting lists in light of new analysis reportedly showing that waits of over 2 years are now more than 800 times higher in Scotland than in England.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, we're investing a record £21.7 billion in health and social care this year in a budget that Jackie Baillie refused to support. That focused investment coming from that budget is delivering tangible improvements in health and social care performance. Statistics published just this morning that I'm sure Jackie Baillie will wish to welcome show just a few examples. The number of operations performed in July 2025 are at the highest level in over 5 years. For planned care, new outpatient activity and inpatient and day case activity has increased, with inpatient day case waiting lists down compared to the last quarter. CAMHS waiting time standards have been met for a third time in a row, and the lowest number of 8 and 12-hour waits in A&E for any month since September 2023, despite July attendances being the highest compared to any other July in 6 years. These are encouraging signs that efforts to improve access and efficiency are delivering results, and my thanks go to the staff for their incredible efforts.
Jackie Baillie.
So much spin from the Cabinet Secretary, he must be positively dizzy, and I'm afraid his excuses won't wash with the 14,963 people waiting over 2 years for an operation. Operations are still lower than the level that they were pre-pandemic. And despite John Swinney promising action last year, the number of people waiting in Scotland has gone up and is at a staggering 880,000 people, a record high. Can the Cabinet Secretary tell us why has it gone up?
Cabinet Secretary.
I note from that question that Jackie Baillie refused to offer thanks to the staff for their efforts in improving performance over the recent quarter, or indeed to welcome the progress that has been made. But of course we are making progress. We've delivered a record number of hip and knee operations in the NHS over the last year. We continue to make improvements, as the figures from this morning demonstrate, and that's why the most recent comparable analysis we've got going back to February show that we are delivering faster levels of increased activity than the NHS in England. That's the difference that an SNP Scottish Government can make.
Jackie Baillie.
It's really interesting because I do spend most of my time listening and talking to staff, and it is an indication of how desperate the Cabinet Secretary is, that he doesn't like the message, he simply attacks the messenger. New figures yesterday show that the number of private hospital and clinic admissions in Scotland are the highest on record, something he failed to mention. Cabinet Secretary, is it not the case that the SNP's neglect of the NHS has led to a two-tier health service, is letting down staff and is continuing the failure of 880,000 patients waiting in pain?
Cabinet Secretary.
It's a bit rich for... Of course, I want to ensure that the NHS capacity in Scotland is able to deal with the demand. That's why we're delivering a record settlement for health and social care services, and we're directing targeted interventions around waiting times. But it's a bit rich for Jackie Baillie to criticise the Scottish Government for private admissions when there were 240 private admissions in Scotland per 100,000 of the population in Scotland. In England, this figure is 54% higher, with a rate of 370 70 admissions per 100,000. Now, Jackie Baillie has come here with the negativity. She has not supported the positive interventions that have come forward. But I've got one area of positive support that Jackie, and this is serious, one area of positive intervention that Jackie Baillie could support us with. Last year, Home Office figures show that there was a 77% reduction in health and care worker visas approved by the UK Government in the year to 2025. We know that we need international workers in health and care. Donald McCaskill has said so clearly. So perhaps Jackie Baillie could help us in recruiting the staff that we need for health and social care by convincing her government to deliver a migration system that works for the health and social care system in Scotland, rather than making it harder for us to recruit.
Sandesh Gohani.
Thank you. And a declaration of interest as a practising NHS GP, where I worked over the summer. And after nearly 2 decades of SNP mismanagement, 1 in 6 Scots is now trapped on an NHS waiting list. GP vacancy rates remain high, with continued nursing shortages. And despite promises, waiting times are spiralling, with nearly a quarter of patients waiting over a year. A shortfall of £290 million prevents practising from hiring additional staff. Patients' physical and mental well-being are being harmed. Isn't it time that this government makes significant common-sense bureaucratic cuts and reduces the redundant middle management of the NHS and divert those resources to the front line?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much, President Officer. I know that Sandesh Gilhani will know this, that Public Health Scotland are very clear that in order to arrive at a 1 in 6 figure, you have to combine list numbers, which they recommend you do not do. And so I think you'll want to check up on that figure. In terms of GP numbers, we've just seen welcome figures showing for the first time since 2019 a rise, 4% rise in the number of whole-time equivalent GPs. I am now engaged with the Royal College of General Practitioners and the BMA around the long-term funding position, including how they can see greater recruitment of general practitioners to match the incredible investment that's going into training them. We're seeing record numbers of 1,200 GPs currently in training.
Claire Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I remind Chamber that I hold a bank nurse contract with Greater Glasgow and Clyde NHS. I welcome the progress the Scottish Government has made in reducing waiting lists, and it's disappointing that Labour consistently talk down our NHS and our hard-working staff. In that vein, what can the Cabinet Secretary say about the recent figures on numbers of GPs, paramedics and wider NHS workforce?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I'm absolutely committed to our workforce. That is the greatest asset of our health and care services, and I remain extremely grateful for the daily contribution that they make to providing high-quality services to patients across Scotland. It is welcome that data published this morning shows an increase in the NHS whole-time equivalent workforce since last year and a 16.6% increase in headcount over the last decade. Last week we saw an increase in the number of new paramedics, and our GP whole-time equivalent workforce has grown by 4% over the last year, the first such increase since 2019. So we'll continue to invest in our NHS, our incredible staff, so they can continue to deliver an NHS for the people of Scotland.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In my summer surgeries this year, one of the biggest issues was lengthy waiting times at NHS Grampian. I had an elderly constituent in Port Gordon who's been told he'll have to wait 18 months for a cataract operation, and another in Hopeman who has been waiting since February 2023 for a referral to ENT and has been told the waiting time is 137 weeks. Can the Cabinet Secretary defend these lengthy waiting times? And if, as he hopefully can't, what is he doing with NHS Grampian, a board that is in dire financial straits, to get these waiting times reduced, because patients urgently need this care?
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr Ross for his question. I know that the waits that he has outlined are not acceptable. They're not a position where we expect to be, and that's why we're making the investments that we are. In terms of, and I was able to recount the position in terms of improvements around both inpatient and day case activity and outpatient activity, as well as record numbers of hip and knee operations. In terms of the position regarding NHS Grampian, we are providing specific support for them through their escalation process of that, he will be aware, and also looking at how there can be regional support provided to bring down their waiting list, so that there is wider health service activity to support the position for his constituents that he is referencing, so that we can see them faster.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In NHS Ayrshire and Arran, more than 11,000 patients were stuck waiting more than a year for an outpatient's appointment. Cabinet Secretary, these waits have consequences for patients and from our highly professional, hard-working staff. The reworked plans you constantly set out are not working. We need some honesty from this government. So I ask you, what can you say to those thousands of patients and to the staff in Ayrshire and Arran about what action you will take to stop them waiting in limbo?
Always through the chair, please. Cabinet Secretary.
I recognise the question from Carol Mochan, and I hope she recognises that actually the interventions we're taking are making a difference. We are seeing increases in activity that I was able to quote from statistics this morning, showing July had the highest number of operations delivered for any month going back to February 2020. That is welcome progress that has been delivered by the targeted investments of this government through the budget of £21.7 billion, and thanks to the hard-working staff in our NHS. We are rolling out greater regional working to support the delivery of faster progress on waiting times, the Golden Jubilee being a critical example, as well as our NTC and other regional hubs, and I would hope that that would help to deliver the improvements that Carol Mochan is waiting for within NHS Ayrshire and Arran.
Question number 3, Kenneth Gibson.
Officer, to ask the Scottish Government, in light of the Cabinet Secretary for Transport's announcement on the 19th of February 2025, whether it will provide an update on its discussions with Peel Ports regarding bringing Ardrossan Harbour into public ownership.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
I can assure Kenny Gibson and his constituents that concluding this matter and bringing Ardrossan Harbour into public ownership is a top priority for Scottish ministers. And yesterday, I shared an update with both the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee and the Ardrossan Task Force that our asset owner, Caledonian Maritime Assets Limited, is continuing positive negotiations with Peel Ports Group. These complex and commercially sensitive discussions are now focusing on heads of terms, and both parties are committed to confirming details of the potential sale as quickly as possible. Achieving a clean title on the assets, a large part of which have not been transacted since the late 19th century, and adhering to legal and commercial due process is essential to securing a sustainable future for our ferry operations. This Government will continue to support the role of Ardrossan Harbour for the long-term benefit of local communities in Arran and Ardrossan, and I look forward to updating Parliament on further progress at the earliest opportunity.
Gibson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. I'm heartened that progress is being made and commend her tenacity in pursuing the harbour's purchase. However, progress still appears to be glacial. The communities of Ardrossan and Arran just want to know when the purchase will successfully conclude, given the time it's already elapsed. Few thought, regardless of how complex the negotiations to buy at harbour would take even 6 months that we've waited so far. So can the Cabinet Secretary say what further work is being done to ensure the purchase is concluded in days and weeks rather than months and years?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I do understand frustrations. I have and been quite clear of my determination that this will be concluded, but success will be when those negotiations succeed and are agreed by both parties. On my part, I think the move to heads of terms ensures that we're getting into what will be the practical detail of ensuring that clean title that I referred to, and that will be the long-term result of those negotiations. But in terms of that impetus to ensure that now we've got to this critical stage, that progress is made more rapidly, he can be assured that it has my utmost attention, as it has done in recent months.
Kenneth Gibson. I
thank the Cabinet Secretary for that further response and sympathise with the predicament. Peel Ports chronically underinvested in the harbour for years, and when Save Ardrossan Harbour and Arran for Ardrossan Harbour came to Holyrood, the Cabinet Secretary met them, while Peel wouldn't when they protested outside their Glasgow HQ. And while the Scottish Government has declined to comment on active commercial negotiations, Peel accused it of not matching their pace, energy and commitment. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that to right the wrong of the Tory privatisation of Ardrossan Harbour, Peel Ports should cease trying to hold Scottish taxpayers to ransom and sell the port lock, stock and barrel for a fair price now?
Cabinet Secretary.
I agree a fair price is absolutely essential. He is also correct to remind the Chamber that this is a result of the Conservative privatisation of ports and indeed the long history. And indeed, he also recognises the key of this, why we are doing it, is to ensure the investment, both in the short term and the long term, is made to ensure that there is a secure and sustainable future for Ardrossan Harbour.
Jamie Green.
Presiding Officer, let's not forget it was Humza Yousaf, when he was Transport Minister, promised the upgrade of Ardrossan Harbour. This government has had years to get on with the job. Peel Ports have accused the government of not matching pace, energy and commitment to the negotiations, and they say that it must be a higher priority. So I hope that is the case moving forward. But can I ask specifically if the Cabinet Secretary would consider extending the window of opportunity for compensation beyond today being the last day to apply for it, because there are businesses out there who still need cash and are not aware of the scheme. But secondly, will that scheme be extended to businesses in Ardrossan? Because I don't want to see a single small business in Ardrossan lose business or go bust as a result of this sorry saga.
Cabinet Secretary.
So I know the Liberal Democrat member has taken the side of Peel Ports and accepted their interpretation. Can I say, as the Cabinet Secretary, I'm trying to ensure that there are constructive discussions between both parties, and indeed both are giving this the attention that is required. He refers to a separate scheme that had been announced by the Rural Affairs and Islands Secretary to help support islanders. I understand there has been an extension for that period. My main concern for Ardrossan is to keep it as open and operating as long as possible, and that is why we're providing additional funding to ensure there is a two-port provision where it's possible. But I'm also very conscious that there will be a period when there is investment that will mean that harbour will be closed, and I think we should be turning our attention to how we can support businesses through that very practical stage.
And Katie Clark.
In February, after years of the Scottish Government ridiculing those arguing for the public ownership of Ardrossan Harbour, the Transport Cabinet Secretary announced in Rural Affairs portfolios that they now supported it. The Scottish Government knew more than 10 years ago, when they decided to commission the two Arran ferries, that they didn't fit into Ardrossan Harbour, that the Scottish Government didn't own Ardrossan Harbour, and that it was going to be very difficult to get a deal with the owners. But they spent years failing to take the necessary compulsory action. Does the Cabinet Secretary accept that the Scottish Government have failed the people of Arran and Ardrossan?
Cabinet Secretary.
No, I don't, and I'd be interested if this is the new Labour Party's policy to have compulsory purchase of ports and harbours in Scotland. I think that might be news to a lot of investors who are wanting to create jobs and provide things. The member was not a member of this Parliament, and she is rehearsing an argument which I think is more about propaganda. Presiding Officer, I think this is very important to the people of Ardrossan.
Let's hear one another.
I think the member is perhaps in her anger betraying, I think, her regret that actually progress is being made. But if she thinks compulsory purchase, was ever a legal solution, or indeed is a solution for this or other ports, then I think the Labour Party needs to look very seriously at its economic case.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions.